Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel. October 30th, 2017.
The Kuhner Report, presented by Kelly Financial Services. This is the Kuhner Report.
It begins. Okay, my friends, stunning developments. Paul Manafort, the former campaign chairman of Donald Trump, and his business associate, Rick Gates, have now been indicted on 12 counts by special counsel Robert Mueller. But before I get to that, a special announcement. I am going to be off both tomorrow and Wednesday. I have a very important engagement I need to go to. It is a funeral for a very dear friend. And unlike others, I am going to respect the wishes of the family who wanted to keep this person's identity and the wake and the funeral private. However, I will be making a major announcement on this show this Friday at 2:35. So please, everybody, tune in, 2:35 this Friday. I'll be making a major announcement on the Kuhner Report. I am off tomorrow, and I am off Wednesday. Mike Siegel will be filling in. Okay, my friends, a lot to talk about today. As I prefaced in the opening, Paul Manafort has now been arrested. He, along with his protege, Rick Gates, by Robert Mueller. He turned himself in to the FBI. It is a sealed indictment that has now been unsealed. He has been indicted by a federal grand jury on 12 counts. And in particular, they are 12 counts of conspiracy, the criminal counts, conspiracy against the United States, conspiracy to launder money, unregistered agent of a foreign principal, false and misleading Foreign Agents Registration Act statements, false statements, as well as tax fraud, money laundering, wire fraud. In other words, potentially Manafort could be spending the rest of his life in jail, as well as that of his business associates. Now, we knew something was up on Friday when CNN teased out that indictments were coming Monday morning, which raises the first and obvious question. Why is Mueller and his people, why are they leaking to the Clinton News Network? If this is supposed to be a fair, impartial, objective investigation, they're already leaking to the political enemies of the president. That is point number one. Point number two, and the most important point. I've gone through all of the indictments, all 12 of them, 31 pages. President Trump's name is not mentioned once. In fact, most of the allegations against Paul Manafort and his business associate Rick Gates go back years, way before he was the chairman of the Trump campaign for a couple of months. So we're talking about alleged financial crimes, and he was a sleazy lobbyist. Everybody knew that. Washington is full of sleazy lobbyists, but they go back years and years and years. In other words, I've looked over the whole 31 pages. There is nothing in there about Russia colluding with the Trump campaign, Russia meddling in the election, Putin and the Kremlin scheming with Trump or Trump associates or Trump aides to mastermind the victory of Trump over Hillary Clinton. There is in other words, there is nothing in there about the stated purpose of Mueller's investigation. Nothing. They are, maybe we'll see if he can prove them, they're financial crimes, they're conspiracy crimes, it's white-collar crime. It's essentially, at its core, it is money laundering and embezzling, at its fundamental core. Now, the charges do go hard on Manafort. He did have entities in Cyprus, and he did do business dealings, which was well known for years. This is no open secret. This is no secret, forgive me. It was an open secret whereby Manafort was doing business with the pro-Russian government in Ukraine before it was toppled in 2014 by the nationalists in the Maidan, the infamous Maidan revolution. So he did do business with a pro-Putin figure who, Yanukovych is his name, Viktor Yanukovych, who apparently gave him over $18 million in undisclosed payments. According to what Mueller is alleging, he essentially then, Manafort and his business associate, created a slush fund in which much of that money was undisclosed to the American government, much of it was tax-free, much of it was then secretly embezzled, millions of dollars, in which Manafort used it for homes in Florida, homes in the Hamptons. He bought apparently fancy sports cars. He had nearly a $1 million antique rug collection. I mean, how many rugs can you buy with $1 million? But anyway, so he apparently used that money, didn't report it or disclose it to the American government, was clearly in bed with the Ukrainian government at the time, years ago, which is disgusting, maybe even criminal. It's clearly immoral. But as I can tell you definitively, having been in D.C. for over 10 years, that's lobbying. That's what lobbyists do. In fact, what is stunning about this is everything that is being charged against Manafort could legitimately be charged against as an example, take your pick, Hillary Clinton. She set up her private slush fund, not to the tune of $18 million, but to the tune of $250 million, in which, forget the pro-Russian Ukrainian government, the Russian government itself, through shell companies and banks, funneled $145 million to the Clinton Foundation. So if he wants to go after Manafort's books, open up Clinton's books, the Clinton Foundation, and you'll find much bigger crimes. That's number one. Number two, her campaign chairman, John Podesta, we know, took literally millions of dollars, again, not from a pro-Russian Ukrainian government, but from the Kremlin itself. He and his brother, John and Tony Podesta, were up to their eyeballs in Russian money. In fact, they used Manafort, who had contacts in Ukraine, had contacts with some Russian oligarchs, to then lobby Hillary Clinton for Uranium One. So if Mueller is really serious about going after Russian collusion, forget Paul Manafort, he's small potatoes. The bigger fish are John Podesta, Tony Podesta, Bill Clinton, and Hillary Clinton. Furthermore, this broke over the weekend, which the mainstream media is deliberately trying to suppress. It has now come out, this is now irrefutable, that the infamous Trump, as Maxine Waters would put it, dossier, the infamous Trump dossier, which was, we now know, funded, by the way, most of it completely discredited. It was a smear campaign against the president. It was funded, we now know clearly, by the Hillary Clinton campaign, by the Democratic National Committee, but now we find out there was a third person who funded it. The FBI. We now know that the FBI paid for the dossier's author, Christopher Steele, paid for his travel expenses. What is the FBI doing? Giving money to a British foreign agent who's a specialist on Russia? Why are they funding him? The FBI has no business giving him money. They were implicated in the smear campaign against President Trump. They deliberately took sides in the election to try to help Hillary Clinton win and bring down President Trump. So we know that Comey paid, or his people paid, for the Chris Steele part of it, the dossier and the travel expenses. In fact, Comey wanted to put Chris Steele permanently on the FBI payroll, which then begs the larger question. The person who is giving out the indictments should be indicted himself. And now I'm talking obviously about Robert Mueller. This is the man that is covering up for James Comey. This is the man who is covering up for Hillary Clinton. This is the man that is covering up for John and Tony Podesta. And this is the man who is covering up for the fact that he himself knew about the Uranium One deal, knew about how the Russians had bribed and bought off the Clintons, secretly funneled money to the Clinton Foundation through the Podesta Group, using Paul Manafort as the kind of go-between, and knowing all of this corruption, all of these kickbacks, all of this bribery, all of this influence peddling, this out-and-out treason, he personally signed off on the Uranium One deal. And here's another kicker. This it's like a spy novel. It's page after page after page. Now we find out that the Obama administration sent nearly $1 million to Fusion GPS to help them compile the phony Trump dossier. Now, remember, what is the allegation against Trump? The allegation against Trump is that he or his campaign officials colluded with or shared information with Russian officials close to the Kremlin. This is the allegation, to help tilt the election in favor of Trump against Hillary. Well, what's the dossier? What was the Uranium One deal? What was all of this about? At its core, the Trump dossier used Russian sources, Russian intelligence figures, people at the top of the Russian foreign ministry, to go and smear Donald Trump in a collusion campaign with Hillary Clinton and the DNC. The very thing that they're accusing Trump is what they did with the Russians to defeat Trump to help get Hillary Clinton elected. And Robert Mueller is leading this investigation? Are you freaking kidding me? He should be in prison himself. The indictments itself, though, against both Manafort and Gates, have now unleashed the floodgates of speculation. Listen now to Andrew Napolitano this morning on Fox and Friends say this could be the first of many dominoes to fall. Roll it, Brittany.
What does this tell you overall about the Mueller probe?
That this is the first of many dominoes to fall. That Bob Mueller is following the standard MO of federal prosecutors. You got a totem pole, you got somebody at the top of the totem pole, that's your big prize. No surprise, it's the President of the United States. You're going to indict people going up the totem pole to see if you can squeeze them, threaten their ruination by loss of liberty and loss of property, to get them to turn evidence against the top guy. Sometimes people will make things up so that the squeezing will stop. Sometimes they'll say, I don't know anything about the president. He didn't do anything wrong. He had nothing to do with this. We'll see where it's going to go. This is the first of many steps in Bob Mueller's putting together an enormous puzzle.
My friends, let me tell you why Mueller did it. He did it for two reasons. Number one, he has to try to justify all of the money and resources that he's spending on this witch hunt. He needs a scalp, any scalp. The fact that these indictments have nothing to do with collusion or with Trump having colluded with Russia just shows that Mueller wants to indict for the sake of indicting. That's number one. Number two, what he is desperately trying to do is use this as leverage to squeeze Manafort, squeeze Rick Gates, squeeze them, hoping against hope that they're going to spill the beans on something, on anything regarding Trump. And the sad fact of the matter is, he won't get what he's looking for, because he knows deep down the only person who didn't collude with the Russians was Trump. That's why there's nothing to get from Manafort. And my question to you is this. It's the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Bill Kelly Financial Services. Do you think now that the Manafort indictments will eventually bring down President Trump? Is this now the beginning of the end? If you believe they will eventually lead to Trump's downfall, text the letter A to 680-680. Or do you believe no, there may be a lot of smoke, but there's no fire? Text the letter B to 680-680. As always, you can vote online at WRKO.com. Your calls, your reaction, next. 1226 here on the great WRKO. Dan, you're up first. Go ahead, Dan.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for taking the call.
My pleasure.
Hey, I started thinking about this over the weekend. Trump is a smart guy. Trump's known Manafort for years. He lives in the building. He lives in Trump Tower. They've been friends for years. What are the chances that Trump picked him because they knew this would all play out this way, and he can tie in Podesta, he can tie in the Clintons, and all that went on in Russia?
Dan, I'll be honest. I mean, it's an interesting theory, and thank you for that call. I don't know. It's starting to ascribe psychic powers to Trump, you know, that he can sort of look at a crystal ball and look into the future. Look, I know for a fact, because I was really plugged into that campaign, the reason why Trump initially brought him on board was Manafort was known as a real professional, a brilliant Washington insider who could put together a really good convention. Just somebody, if you wanted somebody to make the trains run on time, Manafort's the guy, because he was originally a Bob Dole guy. So he had so many outsiders on his campaign that the advice was, look, you need somebody who knows Washington, who knows how to navigate Washington, who can put together this convention and streamline your campaign because there's too much factional infighting. So that was the reason why he brought Manafort on board. Now, what is to me disgusting is that everybody knew that Manafort was a lobbyist. This was an open secret for years. And they knew that he had extensive ties in Eastern Europe, and they knew that he was a shill for the pro-Russian Ukrainian government. But that's Washington. It's hard for people outside of Washington to understand this, but like I was there for 10 years. I think, honestly, God is my witness, like I'm in the confessional, I think I was the only guy who didn't take money in that city. The Russians approached me to do a newsletter for them and pay me obscene amounts of money. The government of Kazakhstan approached me and a good friend of mine. We're running Insight. They were going to offer me on the spot a $350,000 a year salary plus expenses, et cetera, to be the editor-in-chief of a conservative newspaper. However, with the caveat that they wanted to be anti-Israel and they wanted to be more friendly to Muslim interests. I said, no way. I walked away. But what I'm saying is that's how the city operates. It is foreign occupied territory. So the Russians are lobbying, the Ukrainians are lobbying, the Saudis are lobbying, the Chinese are lobbying, frankly, the French are lobbying, the Germans are lobbying. Everybody's lobbying that city. So it's a city of whores. I'm being serious. It's like what Mueller is now doing. This is what's really disgusting to me. He's going into a brothel, and it's full of prostitutes. Washington is full of prostitutes. And he says, I'm going to get you for whoring. Well, okay, yes, he's a whore, and so is John Podesta, and so is Tony Podesta, and so is Hillary Clinton, and so is Bill Clinton, and so is Fusion GPS. Look, these were Wall Street Journal reporters who created this firm, and they were basically guns for hire. And that's how they made big money. In fact, it came out over the weekend, actually on Friday. We now know who the Republican was that funded initially Fusion GPS. It was the big hedge fund guy, Paul Singer. Huge open borders supporter, Amnesty, open borders, a backer of Marco Rubio. And so what he did was through his media outlet, the Washington Free Beacon, and I know people who work at the Washington Free Beacon. Some of them are half-decent reporters, but you go there for the money. In other words, you're a hired gun. You go to the Washington Free Beacon, you essentially become Paul Singer's hitman or hitwoman, And the Washington Free Beacon was the one that helped funnel money initially into Fusion GPS to do opposition research on President Trump. Later, it was the Clintons and the DNC that hired Christopher Steele. So Singer and the Republicans had nothing to do with the Trump dossier. That came later. But the fact of the matter is, if you want to make big money in Washington, you just got to be for sale. Now, I was never, God is my witness. I couldn't sell this country out. I couldn't. Because of my grandfather, because of my father, because of what we endured under communism, because we saw how great America was in liberating my family and the ancestral homeland. So, in honor of my grandparents and my own, frankly, moral integrity, I couldn't do it. But I've said this before and I'll say it again. I said it for years, and I think this explains Trump. If the American public truly knew how corrupt, decrepit, and for sale the whole city is, there'd be a revolution. So this, to me, is the ultimate smoke and mirrors dog and pony show. He's not cleaning out the bordello. He's just going after one of the prostitutes to protect the other higher whores, the ones who make the real money in the city. 617-266-6868. More with your calls. Jackie Murphy. Jackie, what's the latest? 12:39 here on the great WRKO. Okay, my friends. Very sad day for the Kuhner man. Anyway, I'm going to be doing today's show, obviously, but I will not be here tomorrow and Wednesday. I'll be making a major announcement on this show Friday at 2:35. Other people have been speaking about it. I am respecting the family's wishes. I'm going to be burying a very, very dear friend. Sorry, it's getting very emotional. Anyway, I'm burying just a really good guy. And the family has wanted to keep the wake and the funeral very private. And I've been honoring the family's wishes. I know others have blabbed. They spoke. They went public with it. I'm going to respect the family's wishes. I don't defame the dead. That's just me. So, anyway, very tough show for me today. If I sound down or depressed, it's because I am down and depressed. Anyway, I won't be here tomorrow. I won't be here Wednesday. Mike Siegel will be filling in, but I'll be back on Thursday, God willing. And Friday we'll have a very, very big announcement, 2:35. Okay. To me, the big story about Paul Manafort, to be very candid with you, is I'm starting to think more and more with his extensive ties to the Podesta group, how he worked with John and Tony Podesta. And as you know, Podesta was basically Hillary Clinton's right-hand man. He was her campaign chairman. Tony Podesta was her big bundler. He was her bag man. Everything flowed through the Podesta group. Manafort was there for years. And that's how he got the Russians to give so much money to the Podestas to funnel it into the Clinton Foundation in exchange for the Uranium One deal. So when, to me, people talk about Paul Manafort, why he was campaign chairman, to me, the bigger issue is, and I think it's a fair question, was he not a mole? Because if you actually look at the Trump campaign, if you remember during the summer when he actually was managing that campaign, I was criticizing Trump, saying, dump this guy like a hot potato. This guy is trouble. He's smothering the Trump agenda. He doesn't want Trump to be Trump. He's trying to force Trump to run a conventional Republican campaign that Mitt Romney ran, that John McCain ran, and that we know will end up losing. And so, to me, the real question about Paul Manafort, if you want to know the truth, was he sent in as a kind of agent or a mole by the Podestas and by the Clintons to subvert and sabotage the Trump campaign from within? That, to me, is the obvious question. CNN, however, which is really disgracing itself at this time, by carrying water for the Clintons to such a degree they won't even discuss the biggest scandal of our time, which is the Uranium One Hillary bribery scheme, and instead listen now to Jeffrey Toobin saying, What the hell was Manafort doing on Trump's campaign to begin with? Roll it, Brittany.
Can I just expand on a point that Asha is making, because I think it's a very important one. Why was Paul Manafort involved in this campaign? Why, who is he? Why is he involved? I mean, what this indictment lays out is that he was making millions of dollars from the Russia-backed party in the Ukraine. I mean, he is someone who was doing Vladimir Putin's bidding in Ukraine. Wow. He then becomes the campaign chairman for Donald Trump. Who's he working for? What side is he on? I mean, it is consistent with a campaign that was highly sympathetic to Russia.
You will remember.
This is amazing. Honestly, my friends, this is Orwellian. Like, I'm listening to this. I'm like, is this for real? Okay, so number one, John Podesta is swimming in Russian money. He was Hillary's campaign chair. No problem there. Hillary and Bill swimming. I'm not talking some Ukrainian oligarch. I'm talking straight from Mother Russia, straight from the Kremlin, swimming, the Clinton Foundation swimming in Russian cash. And we can prove they got our strategic uranium reserves. For their 145 mil, they got what they wanted. Where's Jeffrey Toobin? And then, Trump was really, really considerate and favorable to the Russians. What? What did he say? All he said was, maybe on ISIS and Syria, we can have an alliance. That's it. Who pushed the reset with Russia? Hillary. Who turned a blind eye to Crimea? Hillary and Obama. Who turned a blind eye to eastern Ukraine? Hillary and Obama. Who allowed the Russians to move into Syria? Hillary and Obama. Who allowed the Russians to nuke up the Iranians? Hillary and Obama. I mean, what are you talking about? Nobody was more favorable to the Russians than Obama and Hillary, to the point that Obama mocked Mitt Romney, if you remember that infamous 2012 campaign debate where he said, hey, Mitt, take it easy about your criticisms of Mother Russia. Relax. The 1980s are calling. They want their foreign policy back. And these guys are going on about how Trump was supposedly lying down for Putin. It's just unbelievable. It's like George Orwell's 1984. We're at war with Oceania? No, we're not at war with Oceania. We're at war. No. In other words, the truth is whatever they want it to be. They just make this stuff up as they go along. I mean, this is sheer propaganda. Nothing more. Nothing less. John in Fitchburg. Go ahead, John.
Hey, Jeff. First, condolences on your loss. It's always difficult to lose a close friend.
Thank you.
It's very easy.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you.
Hopefully I have something that will cheer you up a little bit. I just heard an interview, and forgive me, I don't know what station it was on, with Lanny Davis. And he was on with some host. And he sounds like a national program. And a couple of journalists, and of course the journalists are sharing this as, big news, and, it's going to lead to Trump. And Lanny Davis was basically very nervous. He was defending Manafort to the hilt, reminding everybody he was innocent until proven guilty, and that this law is not cut and dry as they're making it seem, that these reporting requirements are very murky, and he himself, has had issues with it in the past, knowing when he should and should not report. And basically, and the other thing he mentioned was, his advice to President Trump was, I would just ignore it. I would just basically say no comment, but knowing, the president, he's going to get involved. And, I mean, you could just hear in his voice the concern that he has because he knows where it leads, just as
bingo.
you said.
John, bingo, and thank you for that call. Look, there is a key WikiLeaks email. If you remember, I cited it during the campaign. Let me refresh your memory. Where Hillary Clinton tells Donna Brazile and tells all of them, if we don't win this election, we're going to hang. We're all going to hang. Now, you spoke of Lanny Davis, okay, one of the top consigliaries for the Clinton crime family. I know Lanny Davis. Look it up. He wrote a column for my paper, the Washington Times, for years. Let me tell you where Lanny gets his money from. Lanny's in bed with the Pakistanis. Everybody in Washington, look, you know the rape scandal, the sexual harassment scandal that's plaguing Hollywood? In Washington, it's not sex. I'm telling you, it's bribery. I hate to say it, but almost everybody does it. And the question is, who's your client? Well, let me tell you who Lanny's bought and paid for. Lanny's bought and paid for, I know Lanny. He's bought and paid for by the Pakistanis. So Lanny shills for the Pakistanis. Okay? So what Lanny's worried about now is this, is if Mueller if he's serious, he's not, but if he's serious, this will destroy the Podestas. This will destroy the Clintons. This will bring them all down. And if you really start going after these people that have been shilling for foreign interests, you're going to have to indict the whole city. I mean, it really is that bad. So this is why I've been saying for a long time, trust me when I tell you this, a multi-billionaire who comes to Washington, D.C. with a genuine mandate from the people to drain the swamp is the most dangerous man on earth because he can't be bought. The key to Washington, everybody's bought. So think of it this way. We're all holding guns to each other's head. You want to blow the whistle on me? I'll blow the whistle on you. So you better be quiet. So that's the game that they play. Well, this guy comes in like a wrecking ball. And he says, no. There's a new sheriff in town. He's now the most dangerous man. And that's why they're desperate to bring him down. Look, I'm not shilling for Paul Manafort. I know Paul Manafort. Okay? He's a whore. But the question is, the city's full of whores. So if you're worried about whoring, then go after all the whores. But there's nothing special about Paul Manafort. Now, I'd get rid of him, but I get rid of the whole freaking city. So what you're seeing right now is one big scam. And that's for the masses. To make everybody think, oh, there's something to the Russia thing. There's nothing. The only man who didn't collude with the Russians was Donald J. Trump. Nick in Weymouth. Go ahead, Nick.
Hey, you're exactly right, Jeffrey. You know, we've already seen the rounds of all the so-called Senate and congressional investigations. Look at how people like even Trey Gowdy sold his soul as if he had no fundamental knowledge of U.S. Code 18 and let Comey stand there and lie about a particular section and included nothing in terms of intent. What these are really all about, by especially the anti-Trumps and of course the Democrats in that group, and of course the Republicans who are in that group, is to create concern to the public so when it comes time for elections, the voters will be swayed by this baloney. Now, this guy Papadopoulos, this is very interesting. He doesn't really have much of a background. He worked for Carson up until January. Then he jumped on the Trump campaign in March. And guess what he was doing? He was then supposedly communicating with Russian agents, whatever. And guess what? To talk about dirt on Hillary. Does this sound familiar to you? He communicated with Manafort, and he wanted Trump. This guy Papadopoulos wanted Trump to go there. Manafort told him, supposedly, allegedly, well, he's not going to do these things. We need someone at a lower level. Does Donald Trump Jr. sound familiar to you? This is like in May. So here's what I'm getting at is fruit from the poisonous tree, okay? I suspect that the Papadopoulos thing comes a lot from the phony Trump dossier, as well as the Carter Page baloney, et cetera, et cetera. And if in front of an honest federal judge, even if these people are guilty of sin, anybody with Trump and Trump himself, it would all be thrown out of court because they lied about the dossier when they got the FISA warrants in the first place.
Bingo.
This is why Trump blew another milestone. As soon as they found out that Rottenstein, Holder, Mueller, of course, who sat by there through all the Obama scandals while he's FBI, they knew about the uranium. They're investigating this. They should be thrown out, fired immediately. And how could the public complain about a negative? In other words, you can't prove a negative. You can't prove that what Trump is saying is not true. In other words, he is compromised.
Nick, look, you touched on something very profound. The problem with Mueller's investigation, mark my words, it's based on the Trump dossier. Everything is based on the Trump dossier. His surveillance of Manafort comes from the Trump dossier. His surveillance of the Trump campaign, or the FBI's, is from the Trump dossier. The headquarters, the Trump headquarters, Trump Towers, is from the Trump dossier. Well, we know the Trump dossier was bought and paid for by Hillary and the DNC. So it won't even stand up in court. The whole thing has now become a massive conflict of interest. And that's why if Mueller had any honor, he would recuse himself and resign on the spot. Bruce in Raynham. Go ahead, Bruce.
Jeff, how you doing? Sorry to hear of your loss. Hey, I don't know how Trump got where he did in private life, but I support the guy. I'd love to see him do half of what he campaigned on, but he's just not coming. He's got no fight. He's got no initiative. He should have got rid of Mueller months ago. This is the beginning of the end for Mueller, because Mueller is going to go to Manafort and say, hey, if you sing the right song, I can make things go easy for you. Oh, what song is that? Well, Trump was in on it too. I think, like you said, they're gonna chop from the bottom of the totem pole up, and they're just gonna look whatever evidence. He's not gonna care if it's true evidence or if it's fake, because Mueller is in a race with the Trump administration. He's got to get rid of Trump before Trump can get an investigation going on Uranium Gate and the dossier.
Beautiful. Excellent. Beautiful. You nailed it. Look, and Trump mentioned it over the weekend. It's time for a special counsel on Hillary and Uranium One. So the race is on. Mueller wants to knock Trump off before Trump can knock him off. Was that infamous Trump Tower meeting a setup? That discussion, more with your calls next.
The voice of Boston is you. 680 WRKO Boston, 93.7 WEEI HD2 Lawrence, Boston. It's 1 o'clock.